Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aaron Tobin, and I'm president of the Dallas Bar Association, and so thankful that you can join us here today for what's going to be a wonderful CLE program on diversity and inclusion. We have an absolute all-star cast lined up to talk to you, and I promise, I understand that I'm standing in the way between you and them right now, and I'm not going to take too much of your time, but just want to say that last year when we formed the Allied Task Force, which ultimately involved into the Equality Committee that we started this year, the idea was to put together specific initiatives that address the very important issues of diversity and inclusion with our profession. We understand, all of you understand, everyone on this panel understands that our profession is not where it needs to be when it comes to including women, attorneys of color, disabled attorneys, and other attorneys who come from different backgrounds within our profession. And in fact, the diversity survey that went out there underscored that very thought. But the Equality Committee is focused on specific initiatives that are going to bring more people to the table, bring more people to the conversation, and ultimately improve where our profession needs to vitally improve in the areas of diversity and inclusion. So I'm so thankful that you're there. I'm so thankful for these panelists. I'm so thankful for all of our sponsors that supported not only the diversity survey, but our initiatives going forward. And probably the person I'm most thankful for is my friend, Vicki Blanton, who's here to lead us in our discussion today. And I'll turn the program over to you right now. So thank you, Vicki.
Thank you so much, President Tobin. This has been an amazing journey that we're able to continue this, and we appreciate the Dallas Bar Association in its first ever participation in this survey, which helped us to move it to diversity 2.0, if you will, as we speak to the Dallas Bar and legal community. Liz, I'm not sure if you needed to read something first.
No, I think we're ready to go. I just want to let everyone know that we'll announce the course number toward the end of the presentation, and we'll also post it in the chat. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you. So about August of last year, we started on a journey with the diversity law firm survey. And we had hoped to get the report out at the end of last year, but we extended the time because we wanted to allow full participation. We requested that the 50 firms with the largest footprint in Dallas respond to our survey, and we got a response for about 21 firms. On February 24th of this year, we released the report. If you have not seen it or had the opportunity to read it, we invite you to go to the DBA website and click on the diversity tab, and you can find the full report there. I was honored to chair that survey and had great committee members who started out with me, one of which you will hear from, who is moderating the panel today, Courtney Perez. But I also want to thank the other panelists, Maria Aceves, Hiram Masri, also Erica Fidel, Stacy Glenn, Tawana Franklin, and Mario Wynn. So thank you so much to all of our committee members. I also want to acknowledge Canaries in their efforts in creating the survey, disseminating it, collecting the data, analyzing it, and helping us to draft that report. And you will find that it is very pleasing to the eye. It's very user-friendly. There are lots of charts and graphs to make it a very useful tool for you. And then also we want to thank AT&T Legal Department, who underwrote the budget for our survey efforts. So thank you to all of those who participated. What I want to highlight to you today, before we jump into the meat of the discussion with Courtney and our panelists here, some of the stats that stood out, just a few of the points here. One, of course, there's a comparison with Dallas versus the US. Dallas is a little bit behind the US totals, and I'm not surprised in that because Dallas tends to be a little more conservative than other legal communities. But the stats still remain staggering that 88% is the total for those in the highest levels. 88% are still white men in firms, with about 12% women. And then when you look at women and men of color, only about 3% men of color and about 1% women of color are those who are at the highest level, meaning the highest earning levels generally in a law firm. Less than half the firms have diversity training annually, and about only 30% of those tailor that training to specific levels, whether partner, associate, or general staff levels. Only 19% of the firms surveyed have a supplier diversity program. So not only demonstrating your diversity efforts through the personnel you have, but how you spend your dollars. Only about 19% of the firms display that level of diversity. Only about 2/3 of the firms surveyed have a written strategy. And of those, only about 43% of those actually communicate their diversity strategies to their employees and their staff. So as you can see, there's a lot of meat here, and there's a lot of opportunity in how we present diversity. And also, this is a tool in firms asking the questions of themselves. We surveyed a lot of different areas, including veterans, the differently abled, LGBTQ. We went beyond just gender and race. And we also asked about policies and procedures, because we want to figure out what are the best practices and how can we move this needle forward, and what can we do with actual actionable strategies, tactics, policies, procedures that can be implemented so that we can have a different outcome. So as you can see, I have to wave to make sure my light stays on. So with that said, we will now turn it over to Courtney, because I know that's what most of you want to hear about from our panelists today, about some strategies implemented and why diversity does matter in our legal community. So let me just take a brief moment to introduce Courtney. Courtney is a partner at Carter Arnett, and she has vast experience in litigation, both on the plaintiffs and the defendant side. She is experienced both in federal and state court proceeding to jury trials. She also is experienced in dispute resolution and is certified in that. She is board certified in labor and employment law, and she is president of the New Roundtable, one of the newer legal organizations here in town, and I'm sure she can share a little bit about that experience as well. Courtney is a graduate of Wake Forest with honors, and she also went to law school at the University of Texas School of Law, and she clerked for the Honorable James A. Beatty in the U.S. Northern District of Court in the Middle District of North Carolina. So with that said, Courtney, please take us on our journey as we speak to our other panelists.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Vicki, and thank you to all of our participants, all 166 of you that we see listed here as registrants. Thank you so much for participating in this crucial conversation with us. I hope that that information that Vicki shared with you regarding the survey is informative and gives you some insight into why we're here talking about this issue today. And my hope is that by the end of our discussion today with our panelists, as Vicki said, you will have some actionable strategies and solutions that you can put in place at your firms and your companies. But I also hope that we can give you some additional insight and greater insight that goes into the challenges that we're facing that are not apparently or readily apparent, I should say, from the survey results. And that will challenge you to think about how you can also be creative in addressing some of the challenges and issues that are holding us back from where we can be in a fantastic legal market here in Dallas. So without further ado, let me begin by introducing my esteemed panel. whom I know many of you will know, so it will not, this bio will not, in fact, do them justice, but I want to make sure we have time to get into the meat and potatoes. And to those of you who are attending, if you have a question for a panelist, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And at the end, if we have some additional time and have not already covered your question, we will try to get to that if we can. So without further ado, let me introduce our first panelist is Judge Maricela Moore. She is the presiding judge of the 162nd Judicial Court in Dallas. She is also the Dallas Civil District Court presiding judge of the Central Jury Room, which means she's in charge of how the Dallas Civil Courts will run their jury trial process. In 2019, she was also named the Dallas Judge of the Year by the American Board of Trial Advocates. Judge Moore received her Bachelor's of Science degree from Boston College, her law degree from the George Washington University Law Center, and prior to her judicial service, Judge Moore practiced employment law and also commercial litigation, trade secrets, breach of contract, and the like. So thank you, Judge Moore, for making time to join us today. Next, we have Rob Walters. Rob is a partner at Gibson Dunn. He is nationally recognized for his abilities and accomplishments as a trial lawyer, and particularly in the area of antitrust. He served as lead trial counsel in a number of matters that are listed there in his bio if you visit the firm's website. He's also counseled clients in governmental investigations and antitrust aspects of M&A transactions. He is the partner in charge of the Dallas office and serves as a member of the firm's executive committee. And he was also, and will be giving us this additional perspective today, the executive vice president and general counsel of Energy Future Holdings from 2008 to 2011. Next, we have Emmanuel Ubinas. Emmanuel is a native Spanish speaker and a partner at Jones Day. He has almost 20 years of experience in investigations and litigation matters connected to Latin America. He also counsels companies in compliance aspects and anti-corruption transactional due diligence. He has an extensive pro bono commitment as well, taking on hundreds of pro bono clients throughout his career in asylum cases. He's also the hiring partner of the Dallas office of Jones Day and is one of the co-heads of the Jones Day Hispanic Lawyer Affinity Groups. And prior to this particular task force that generated the survey, Emmanuel was also a member of the Dallas Diversity Task Force, which many of you recall started this survey work, and the last survey by that task force was completed in 2016. Next, we have Amber Rogers. Amber is board certified in labor and employment law. She is a trial lawyer with extensive experience at Hunton. She also is one of the few lawyers in Dallas who actually has a traditional labor practice. So I know she does a lot of union arbitration issues as well. Amber is a trailblazer in her own right. She was the first Black woman elected to the executive committee in her firm's 119-year history. She is also co-chair of the Dallas office of Hunton's diversity committee and co-chair of the firm's Diversity Oneness Luncheon Series, which is a quarterly gathering of the firm's for the firm's racial and ethnic minorities. And she is also the Dallas office's hiring partner and a member of the new roundtable, which we will talk about today as well. And then last but certainly not least, we have Chastity Wilson Henry. Chastity is the Senior Vice President, General Counsel, and Corporate Secretary of CECO Environmental Corporation, a global leader in air quality and fluid handling, serving the energy and industrial and other niche markets. Prior to becoming the General Counsel there, she was an Assistant General Counsel at Kimberly-Clark in the company's Dallas World Headquarters, and she is a graduate of the University of Texas School of Law. Upon graduation, she practiced at V&E before beginning her in-house career. She is also the founder and immediate past president of the new roundtable as well. So that is our esteemed panel. We bring to you, and this is not by accident, a wealth of perspectives today as we talk about this conversation. And part of the reason for that is because I think it will demonstrate to you how important diversity is from multiple perspectives. Diversity is not a minority issue. It's not a woman's issue. It is our issue as practitioners, and we need to address it and treat it with the priority that it deserves for the betterment of our profession as a whole. So my first question, and I'll direct this question first to Judge Moore, is, and it relates to our title, why it matters. Why is diversity in the profession so important? And what's the bigger picture? Beyond just having diversity for the sake of having diversity, why does it matter in particular to the legal industry?
First, I want to commend the effort that has been taken to move not just from collecting statistics, but to discussing the why it matters and what needs to be done to change the statistics. I think Vicki and I were part of the beginning of this process years ago when we were young lawyers and the diversity report card began under our leadership in that with our colleagues when we were leaders of the minority bar organizations. And so I do think it is time to stop just talking numbers and start talking why. So what I'd like to provide as my input in this panel is a perspective from the bench. Why do I think that having diverse attorneys is not only the right thing to do, but it's the smart thing to do when you're trying to advocate as effectively as possible for your client. And so I thought it might be helpful just to begin with a little bit of data on who are the jurors that we see in Dallas County who are coming to serve. And the reason that's important is if we are putting together our most effective legal teams to advocate for our clients, we might want our legal teams to look like the jurors to whom they're selling a story. And so I have studies for the demographics of jurors between 2016 and 2018. So this is data pre-COVID-19. We all know that in the last 12 months, we have not had the ability to bring jurors to the courthouse, but pre-COVID-19, jurors were made up of approximately 50% of those serving were Anglo, white, 23% were African-American, 21% were Hispanic, 5% were Asian, and at least 52% were women. Okay, so that's what your jury looks like. Well, I can tell you from what I have learned from discussing juries post-jury trial with the jurors, because they hold the key. That's where you get your best information. What they tell me is that who is on the team matters. And so if you have a jury of diverse individuals, men and women, it is not a good idea to bring your A game of only Anglo males. It doesn't serve your client's purpose as well as it could if you brought a more diverse perspective and a more diverse mouthpiece to your case. What's important to note though is that this is what the statistics show the juries look like right now. I think it was noted I was the presiding judge of the CJR. Actually, my fabulous colleague, Judge Tillery, has very, very graciously taken that role from me. And I want to let you know that he's working very hard in jury services now, and I really appreciate his work. But what I did when I was the presiding judge and what he's continuing to do is to change the system. We are investing in technology and other tools so that our jurors will actually be more diverse. And so what we're going to see in Dallas County, and I'm confident of this, in the next 2 to 5 years is that the diversity of jurors is going to be even higher. And smart lawyers are going to take note that that is important, and they need to be putting good lawyers in the pipeline to be first and second chairing those cases so that they can assist on that jury team. And without belaboring that comment, I just want to note one other important point. It is not just who's at the table. I will tell you that on a number of occasions, jurors have commented to me, well, there was a woman on the, representing one of the parties, there was a woman at the table, but she never said anything. Or, there was a Hispanic female, but I didn't ever hear her talk. And that is noted and it is not appreciated. And so what I would leave as a comment about why it matters, the reason it matters is because the market requires it. The people you are attempting to advocate to, whether it's the judge, as you all know, the judiciary is much more diverse. Many more women and minorities are reflected in our judiciary. And so if the people that you are advocating to have a demographic that's inconsistent with your law firm, that is something that needs to be noted because it is going to reflect on your efficiency in doing the job that your client has asked you to do. And so that's why it matters. It matters because the market is insisting that we embrace the diversity of those with whom we are surrounded within our community. So thank you for that question, Courtney.
Thank you so much, Judge Moore, and for taking us sort of a step beyond the diversity for the sake of diversity. It matters for diversity of perspective. And yes, that's true, but it matters for other reasons as well. Rob, I wanted to give you a chance to weigh in on this question. It's particularly your perspective in firm management as to why diversity is important, why it matters.
Thanks, Courtney. And listen, it's a real pleasure and privilege to be part of this panel. It's a fabulous panel, and so thank you for the opportunity. So the way I think about it is, look, there's no more powerful force in nature than when you get the intersection of doing the right thing with self-interest. And that, in my judgment, is what's happening in the law profession. And so I would say there are 4 compelling reasons why it matters. First, I think it's sort of in the abstract, it matters because the law profession, we as lawyers have always been on the vanguard. And one of the reasons that many of us are in the profession of important cultural evolution and change. And so it matters that we are out in front on this issue because that's a traditional role that we've played. And frankly, if we don't play this role, it would represent, I think, a professional abdication on our part. Second, it matters because we just get better results. And I think all the empirical data, all the empirical evidence shows that you just get better results as a product of sort of multi-hued and multicultural, multi-ethnic, and just multi sort of variety of ways of thinking that intersect into end products for clients, for juries, or whatever it might be. And all the evidence shows that. Third, I think it matters because, frankly, it would be kind of dumb of us not to, right? I mean, why would we forsake important portions of the talent pool available to serve clients and to serve whatever we're doing within the legal profession? And of course, as demographics evolve and change, that's going to be even more of an imperative. And finally, and I really want to underscore what Judge Moore said, it's really what the marketplace is demanding. Now, what do I mean by the marketplace? Well, surely it's of course the case that clients demand of their firms that they are representative for not only just for the right reasons, but also to be more effective. All the reasons that Judge Moore talked about, all the reasons that I'm describing about how the end results are better. And so it is a very, yes, it's principled. But it's also a very pragmatic and practical approach as general counsels think about who ought to be representing their entity. Certainly when I was on that side, that was a very important component as we thought about how do we get the best results. But then finally, there's one larger phenomenon at work that I think that the legal profession needs to be highly, tuned into. And I am currently the chair of something called the Dallas Citizens Council, which is a business leadership group. And so I spend a lot of time with CEOs and business leaders, and that world is changing, and it's changing for all the right reasons, and it's changing, going the right directions. That world recognizes whether it's a customer base, whatever the stakeholder group, whether it's employees, they must do better. They must think more broadly. They must be more inclusive because their prosperity and their economic growth is turning on a dimension of inclusivity that, frankly, they didn't pay enough attention to historically. And that is happening. And so, and that community is demanding of the people that serve the business community that they mirror that image and mirror those efforts. And so on any number of levels, it matters greatly. And frankly, I think it's a foregone conclusion. It's just a question, in my judgment, about how the legal business, how the legal leadership of the legal profession make sure that we act as to accelerate those things to ensure that we get there as promptly, as quickly, as effectively as possible. You're on mute.
That happens at least once a day in this virtual environment. So I can check mine off for the box today. Rob, you mentioned what clients are demanding. And Chastity, I want to turn to you for the client perspective in terms of what are these things that you are looking for as a client? And what are the things when Rob speaks about clients demanding the change, frankly, in their law firm representation, what is it that you're demanding from your outside counsel and even your in-house legal department? What are the things you're looking for?
Yeah, thanks, Courtney. I mean, I think to kind of piggyback on what Rob said about the fiscal implications, first of all, it's important to contextualize that, especially working for a public company where, you know, we have shareholders and investors. And one point of empirical evidence I found really compelling is that Citigroup last year released a study, and it talked about, you know, many important things, but it says that failing to address the racial gap, the gap between Black people and white people, has cost the US economy around $16 trillion over the past 20 years. I mean, let that sink in. And then on a more encouraging note, I think Citi went on to conclude that if we close these racial gaps, we could see $5 trillion of additional GDP over the next 5 years. For me, that underscores that we're all in this together. This isn't a Black problem, white problem, LGBTQ problem. This is all of our issue, and we all have to be part of the solution. And so connecting that to the business case, as Rob mentioned, you know, obviously we all have a vested interest in, you know, ensuring that there's economic inclusion, because that creates a better economy. But also, I mean, there's also empirical evidence that companies just do better when they're diverse. McKinsey found that, you know, most diverse organizations are 35% to have financial returns above their industry medians. Deloitte study says that they're 2 times more likely to exceed financial targets, 3 times more likely to be high performing, 6 times more likely to be more innovative and agile. And these are all things that are very much of interest to companies and to investors. And so for me, you know, as a member of the executive team and wanting to provide value for not only our shareholders, but other important stakeholders like our communities, our employees, it is my duty to ensure that I am assembling the best team to advise us on our matters. And it's empirically proven that the best teams are diverse teams. And so that for me is not a nice to have, it's an obligation I have when I go out to look for a law firm, when I run an RFP, and I really have to ensure that it's diversity by design. So I'm not coming around on the back end to the firm that I wanted to use because of some relationship and saying, oh, by the way, give us your data, give us your stats on diversity. I'm setting expectations up front that we must have diverse representation and ensuring that they provide that and that those are the same individuals I see on our matters, from litigation to M&A deals, et cetera.
Great, thank you. Emmanuel, can you give us the firm perspective from how client demands in this area have changed and are changing, and what you're seeing in terms of what your clients want in terms of firm diversity?
Happy to discuss. I also, like Judge Moore mentioned, want to commend the organization. As was mentioned, I worked on the task force 10 years ago. I remember pulling very late nights with John Trevino and Heidi Simmons, putting the report together and the graphics together. And it's not just a simple exercise of counting up the numbers. It's a lot of analysis. And this one went way beyond what we could ever imagine ever doing 10 years ago. So all the work that went into that. To jump off the comments that had been made, the reality is, as Chastity, I think, pointed out, from a company perspective, the people that she reports to, the people that she works with are diverse. And from the big firm perspective, the in-house lawyers that we interact with are diverse. The in-house legal teams are well beyond where the law firms are right now as far as assembling diverse teams. And the horror stories that exist of all white male teams coming to pitch a client where you have 3 females and other diverse people in the room, those types of instances used to occur, but they weren't really discussed. But now it's more out in the open, and clients are much more not as passive as to disclose, hey, this is an issue that was raised because of the team that you put together. And to comment on what others have said, the more diverse team, the better the work. From my experience, as was mentioned earlier, almost all of my work relates to Latin America. And it's easier to see from my world that a team of people that match the culture and sometimes have the language capabilities when we're working on Latin America matters makes us a better team than a team that doesn't understand the cultural issues when dealing with people in Latin America. But to extend to everything that we do, when working on with U.S. clients, you're dealing with, like I mentioned, diverse teams in-house, but diverse judges, diverse juries, diverse witnesses, and understanding the cultural issues, and on many matters, other issues that aren't obvious to someone that didn't grow up like most lawyers, and understanding the viewpoints of why something may have occurred or why a certain business deal went a certain way. It really, you need all the different voices in the room to really get to that point. And we'll talk about it, I think, later on, but clients are coming up with carrots and sticks. I mentioned, the stick approach, which is, the team that's put together on a pitch, but clients more and more are coming up with ways, including monetary carrots of rewarding firms for putting together diverse teams or being one of their more diverse law firms. And so we're seeing more and more of that formalized in client guidelines and in pitches.
Great. So we've talked about why diversity matters. We've looked at this from multiple different angles. It matters for many different reasons. The market's demanding it, clients are demanding it. And if that's the case, why then have we had so little movement when you look at these survey results that Vicki shared now in 2021? And I would venture to say, if you compare those survey results to 2016 and certainly years and years and years before that, the needle hasn't moved very much. And so we've got to get beyond just looking at the data and sort of being in this place where we are discouraged and disenchanted to really figuring out, why aren't we making any progress? And then if firms are making progress, what are they doing that the rest of us are missing, and how can we learn from each other? So to the first part of that question, and Amber, I want to direct this question to you. What are some of the challenges that you see facing firms? You're the hiring partner, you're the one, going out and assembling teams to go out and hire diverse talent. What are some of the challenges that you see that firms are facing in increasing diverse representation? And some of the things that are maybe underlying the data that just isn't obvious from the face of these survey results?
Yeah, Courtney, I think one, just to start off as sort of a negative Nancy, is I think a lot of us in this diversity space always work from the opinion that diversity is good and diversity is needed and we want to celebrate it. But we have to realize we, as a greater community, don't all believe that. And, there are people in your firms, there are people in companies who don't believe, that there is this need to go hire people who look different, or that if they were really good, they would just get a job. It would naturally happen, right? So I think we all have to sort of accept, and not to bring any sort of politics into this, but the past few years have shown us we're not all on the same page. So I don't think we can always start from that baseline that we all really agree that diversity is actually a good thing. So that's holding us back. I think another is that firms, particularly large firms, I think are limited, and it's self-limited, but in where they go. So a lot will only visit on-campus interviews, and some of it's resource-based. You know, you can't go to all 180 law schools. But you know that you only go to the top 15 or top 20 schools. So you're limiting your pool that way. And then you're also limiting a lot of firms in how deep you go into the pool. Like most have GPA requirements and cutoffs. So, you know, not getting deep enough into the class pool. Another reason I think why we're seeing so little movement is sort of a chicken and egg problem. It is difficult to attract people, even to cities like Dallas, which is a major city. It's difficult to attract people if you don't have people, and then it's difficult to have people if you can't get people. So it's really sort of a vicious cycle that goes on, and you hate. I know the next panel, part 2 of this panel, will be about retention, but I know myself and anyone else at a large law firm, when you have a lawyer, diverse lawyer, say they're leaving, and that might be to go in-house or work for the government or something else, it hurts. You know, that might be 50% of your associate base in a particular office. So that really does hurt. So sometimes it's just difficult that way. And then I think there's another hindrance is some partners have this belief on what clients want to see in terms of a candidate that they might later be putting in front of them. So I'll just use this really quick example of our OCI season this year. Partner came to me and said, hey, I've heard, you know, a few clients have said that X is sort of timid on deal works. And even though I've talked to them about the great results that they've gotten, that this is a hang up. So as we look for someone, you know, we really want someone tenacious and, you know, aggressive. And it's those type of things that now this, you know, it's a diverse person who associate had been doing this work and, you know, doing great work, but now the person believes we need someone different. We need a different type of person to work on client matters. So sometimes I think that's a holdback also is, you know, the partners just believing what their clients want to see and what type of candidate fits that model may not always be a diverse person. So I think those are some of the hangups that we see.
And what about you, Emmanuel, from the firm perspective as well? What do you see as some of the challenges and issues that we're dealing with that underlie the data that we're seeing?
Yeah, to jump off what was just said, I completely agree. One issue that we deal with is getting acceptance from people on the recruiting committee, people that are making hiring decisions, to look at different pools for potential candidates. You know, one example, anecdotal example I give is, you know, one of my good friends from high school got into Harvard undergrad, Harvard Law School, but didn't attend Harvard and went to a tier 3 school because he got a full ride and it was close to his parents and he was a attorney of color. And that happens a lot where you have, especially racially diverse lawyers who don't have the economic means and need to attend law schools where they're getting scholarship money or are closer to home. And so we as large law firms need to be mindful of those issues, and just knowing that, you know, some people get started later in life as far as being better students, you know, getting after it and looking at different places, and not just looking at grades and looking beyond that. You know, with that said, the same thing with resumes. You know, looking at resumes, some diverse candidates may not have had the opportunity to work at a private equity fund or a McKinsey or whatever it is before law school that may give someone a leg up. And this is their opportunity. You know, they went to law school and they're looking to create their opportunity to work at a great company or entity or law firm. And so we need to be able to provide, you know, that type of avenue. The other aspect where I think large law firms struggle is when you bring in diverse candidates is having them see people like themselves. As the reports show, our numbers aren't where they need to be, and having associates and especially partners that share the diverse background of some of the students we're trying to bring in, and really connecting the diverse students with diverse people in the office is so important, so they can understand that there's a path for them at the law firm. And so that unfortunately sometimes feeds itself and makes it more difficult to recruit law students.
Thank you. That was my 5-year-old who also thinks diversity is important as we have this discussion. So part of what I hear both of you saying is casting the net wider. Casting the net wider in sort of going beyond the traditional recruiting methods that as a firm, we always go to the same 7 schools, and everybody here has a 3.7 GPA or higher, or has been a former federal law clerk. So we've got to cast our net wider, because if it stays so narrow, you are missing an incredible pool of talent. And I wanted to give this panel an opportunity to weigh in on those other pools of talent that firms need to be pulling from, whether it includes going to not only just going to different schools, maybe that they have not traditionally recruited at, different tiers of law firms that they may not have traditionally attended for OCI type recruiting, but resources even that are right here in Dallas that firms may not be tapping into, that they certainly need to know about. So one of those resources, Chastity, I'd like to have you speak to, and that's the DAP Direct program. And then Amber, I want to turn to you for a lateral resource pool to talk a little bit about the new roundtable and any other resources. Certainly, I want to give the panel an opportunity to weigh in on those as well. So Chastity, we'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah, the DAP Direct program, DAP stands for Diverse Attorney Pipeline Program, is a really powerful program, I think, for recruiting women of color into the pipeline. It started several years ago, and I've been heavily involved, and a couple of the law firm attendees on the call actually have been involved in the program for several summers now. But the goal there is really to cast that wider net, to go out. This program is run by women of color in-house counsel. And we go out, we source candidates, we meet with them, we conduct Zoom calls with them over Christmas break every year. We hold a job fair, and these are for women of color 1Ls all over the country. And then we essentially hand select them and present options for law firms that are not necessarily from your traditional schools that you would typically look at, but based on criteria that we know has been proven, right? Because we were once 1L women of color, and this program is run by, frankly, some fairly successful women of color who, may have been written off when they were 1Ls as quiet or shy, or maybe they're not the right person for the team. But it took people seeing something in them like grit and perseverance, et cetera, to give them a chance. And that's what we're doing. And so I'll interview 1L women of color, and I'll present to the law firm and say, look, you say that your criteria are people who are analytical, people who have good emotional intelligence, et cetera. I found the student for you. And it's been fairly successful because they've trusted us to do this. But a couple of the ways in which I think we've been successful at identifying and matching firms with these candidates is we try to take bias out of the process. One big way bias can creep in is during the interview process itself, right? And so instead of seeing a panel of perhaps all white male lawyers, and you're a 1L and you've never interviewed before, you see me sitting across from you, who's been in your shoes 10 or 15 years ago. And that may be a point where you can relate or maybe relax a little bit and know that bias perhaps won't creep into this interview discussion. A second thing is we use a rubric for interviews. We have firm criteria. We know what they're looking for, and we try to make it as quantitative as possible and rate people on numerical skills by the skills of on a numerical scale by the skills the firms have told us they're looking for. And therefore, we're comparing apples to apples. We're asking the same student the same types of questions. I may ask a question about what is a tort. And the student may have forgotten, but it gets me at something that is relevant to the law firm. How able are they to think on their feet? Do they remember what a tort is? Can they at least cobble an answer together and sound confident? All things that we have to do on a daily basis as lawyers. And so, I think we've been successful because we've tried to think outside the box on the traditional law firm model for sourcing students. And I would encourage, law firms to explore those practices as well.
Great. Amber, can you tell us about the new roundtable? And there are two others I'll mention as well in terms of recruiting resources, and maybe also speak to this idea that I've seen come up in the Q&A here, and some of what we've discussed is this idea that firms are lowering the bar if they cast the net wider, and pushing back against that as well.
Right. No, great question, Courtney. And I think the new roundtable is a great example of you are not lowering the bar for anything. I just think of, and perhaps I'm biased, but the African-American women lawyers I know are phenomenal and, top of their game, and they're involved civically, they're involved with their jobs. And I just don't think you're taking any sort of shortcut by hiring them, or really, diverse lawyers in general. And so to that end, the new roundtable, new stands for Network of Empowered Women, is a group. Chastity is our founder. Courtney and I are also founding members. Started about 7 years ago, and we just all came together because we were at similar points in our careers and we got together a lot, and we're talking about the challenges that we were facing in our respective firms or organizations. And that might be lack of mentorship. That might be lack of those, golden work opportunities that will take you to the next level. Like Judge Moore is saying, right? That it's important to put together a diverse team, but it's hard to get yourself to that level to be in front of a jury if you're not getting those very basics your first year, your second year, your third year, right? It all builds on itself. So, what we started was a group where we have 3 core tenets, and that's to empower, to impact, and influence. And we just got together and decided that we were going to unashamedly support each other and build each other's careers, to think about each other first. A great book that I read many years ago is She Wins, You Win. And that's sort of the model we live by. Chastity's success is my success. Courtney's success is my success. Any other women in that group, the goal, the model, the theme that we live by is that if I don't get it, I want you to get it, And so that would be an award, a speaking opportunity, writing opportunity, a referral from some matter or something like that. So to again, unashamedly think of each other first. And we have seen just a tremendous amount of success in our 7 years. And that's folks being promoted to general counsel, receiving other promotions within their organization, making, a lot of us have made partner. We've now crossed over an equity partner, things like that. So it's just been tremendous. And I think as every year we get new members, new interest in it. And again, I think we've had a great influence here locally, just that people, see us, notice us, and what we're doing, again, because it's a just cohesive group that was focused on something narrow, and we've kept that. That's been important too, is like to keep a narrow focus on what we were doing. And I think, to go to your point about the question of lowering standards, I mean, you don't have to. No one is saying if your firm doesn't want to take a student with a 1.2, I think we can all agree that maybe that student needs some help and needs some other direction that you could give them. But that doesn't mean you can't move from, hey, we only want an average of a 3.5 to a 3.2 or 3.1, and just know that people are going to be just as successful there. And I think if firms, looked at some hard data, you might see, okay, well, we have a lot of students from this school, but they don't stay, or maybe they've not been performing as well. So these like generic beliefs about who will be successful and who won't at a law firm, I'm not sure really always hold up very well. So I don't see it. I see the students that we have who are coming through and are diverse they're amazing. They're, top of their class. They have great work experience. They, present themselves well. And again, I think we all just need an opportunity. We need someone to believe in us and to take us under their wing. And, we didn't all have lawyers in our family, and we just need someone to give us a little bit of guidance. And I think most of these law students can take off and do incredible things with that. And that's just up to us to do it.
Fantastic. And I think, Amber, you really raised a good point about leveraging other networks, right? So DAP Direct is another sort of resource pool that firms should be pulling from. The new roundtable would be a great lateral resource pool that people should know about and can be pulling from. And it's about expanding and leveraging your networks, other programs that Dallas firms some of them are participating in. The Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, or SEO program, which is a 1L internship program for minority law students. I participated in that program as well. It's actually prior to the summer before 1L year. The SMU Corporate Law Program, it's not necessarily a minority program, but there are many companies here in Dallas who are saying we're reserving this particular spot for a minority candidate. And they may not be in the top of their class, but if you consider hiring that former intern at a firm, what you have just done is given yourself an in to a in-house legal department where that person interned and has already built relationships and contacts with people that are ultimately either they're going to go back there when they get enough legal experience, and that may be a client source for you, or they've got resources and relationships there that you need to build as a law firm. So we've got to be we've got to expand and leverage our pools of resources here when we say we can't find good diverse talent. I just think it's just not true. And I wanted to give us an opportunity to showcase those different networks, but that can also work against us. And Emmanuel, I'd love for you and Judge Moore to weigh in on this. Traditionally, leveraging some of the same networks and the relationships that we have in law firms, because traditionally law firms have not been very diverse, that can end up in the sort of who do you know hiring pool that may further limit us from being diverse. And I know that both Judge Moore and Emmanuel have put specific solutions in place around that aspect of hiring who you know and leveraging sort of traditional networks. So first I'll ask Emmanuel to speak to that, and then Judge Moore, if you would weigh in from the judicial intern perspective as well.
Thanks. Yeah, this deals with the friend of a friend, and the son of a partner of another firm, the son of a client, a friend from law school, an associate. And from my experience as hiring partner and being on the recruiting committee, vast majority of the time, those are not diverse candidates that are getting the leg up because of a potential connection. And so we definitely, we'll take into account a connection. If Judge Moore sends me an email with a recruit, I will definitely weigh that appropriately. But we have found that for diversity purposes, we do try to put those people on equal footing with everyone else because it is an advantage. It's one of these it's mentioned in some of the questions, some of the things that aren't obvious from looking at the report and how we might get to these numbers is the fact that many people that are coming from diverse backgrounds don't have that leg up. So I would tell that we've got 170 participants on this call, and I know the panelists. I think we should all try to do what we can. When we see diverse candidates that are reaching out looking for a job, and your organization may not have an opportunity for that person for whatever reason, numbers, budget, whatever, to try to use your network to help that person. And that's not just forwarding an email along, but calling that person, talking to that person, and helping them find a job in Dallas. I think that's more meaningful than just sending an email saying, hey, I got this email, let me know if you guys have anything. One network that has been, I think, that can be used more is the recruiting coordinators. All have at big firms are on a listserv, and they can start communicating more about candidates that for some reason or other, maybe one firm doesn't have an opportunity for, but other firms may be looking for a diverse candidate. And I think we need to be doing what we can to help diverse candidates, similar to what we're seeing from non-diverse candidates.
Great. Judge Moore?
So I know we're short on time. I just want to make a couple comments. First of all, I think it needs to be stated that because of COVID-19, the number of opportunities available are limited right now. And this will directly impact those students who do not come from families with strong professional network buddies. You know, if your dad doesn't know somebody, then it's real hard to get an opportunity. And I'm seeing it in the judiciary. So many of the judges are not continuing with mentorship programs or internship programs because of where we are in terms of in-person proceedings. And so there are a lot of students looking for opportunities. I get calls from people, you know, attorneys that serve in that appear before me, attorneys I know. Hey, my son has a friend who's a 3L. Are you taking interns? And I have to be very cautious not to give those opportunities to the person with the most opportunity, with the strongest connections, because that is going to leave our diverse students at a disadvantage. And I think we first have to acknowledge that that is a concern right now, particularly because of the pandemic. And so I wanted to make that comment, and I hope those on this call who are in law firms will take that under consideration when you're getting calls from neighbors and family members who have law students, who are their kids who are looking for opportunities. Please refrain from just throwing those opportunities to those that you already know, because that's going to impact our diverse law students disproportionately. The second thing I wanted to note is that in my court, I take very few interns. I always reserve a spot for the Hispanic Law Foundation's program and a UNT student. When Dean Ferguson was at the law school, I always said, send me one that you think is a diamond in the rough. And the only comment I want to make is that I think that the internship opportunities are underappreciated by law firms when they see those on resumes. When a mentor comes or an intern comes out of my court, not only do they have a relationship with me and my court staff and have an appreciation for what it's like to be a on-the-ground trial lawyer from the background, they also have a relationship with me for the rest of their career. I have annual internship parties. I keep up with every single intern, and to me, I monitor how they are doing professionally. And so a lot of those students perhaps weren't as competitive and couldn't get into some of the big firm in law programs, but boy, they are exceptional students. And so I would encourage law firms to take a look at those students who have really done well in judicial internship programs. Call me, my colleagues, ask me how they're doing, and give those what I call diamond in the rough an opportunity, because that's how you're going to increase diversity on your legal teams. But like we were saying, go outside of the normal check the box locations to find your best students. So anyway, great topics, great questions, but I wanted to at least get that tidbit in before our time is up.
Thank you so much, Judge Moore. Rob and Chastity, I know that Amber and we sort of had the firm perspective, but if you two would give just your 30-second takeaway, if our panel takes nothing else in terms of what you want them to know and remember leaving this panel today. Rob, I want to give you 30 seconds to do that. And Chastity, I want to give you 30 seconds to do that as well. And then we'll turn it over to Vicki for our closing.
Yeah, Chastity, go ahead.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I would say that, I think we've kind of talked through that there are many issues to tackle, but we've also come to an understanding that there are many solutions as well. And there's something that each of us can be doing, whether we're at law firms, in-house, whether we're, regardless of our race or sexual orientation, et cetera, so that if we're not doing something, we're part of the problem. And it's a big enough problem that we're going to need all hands on deck, and we're going to need everyone to be thinking of unique ways they can get involved and help solve these issues.
Yeah, I can't say much more than Chastity did. I mean, we just have to stay the course, have the courage of our convictions, to know that it creates a better world, a better profession, that it is not only the right thing to do, but in every one of our own interests to do so. And, it manifests itself 1,000 different ways, but just on the one issue we were talking about, and law firms run into this is, why do you go to the same 7 schools year in and year out? And understanding that that's just fundamentally being risk averse, right? It's being that somebody doesn't work out, you say, well, they graduated at the top of Harvard Law School. Well, if you look at the NBA or you look at the WNBA or the NFL or whatever, not everybody comes out of Alabama, right? The great athletes come from everywhere. And so you know, and I can tell you in cases I've tried, the people who handed me my head are the ones who came to some from some law school I'd never heard about, okay? And so we just need to have the courage of our convictions to understand and be relentless about this and not take no for an answer. And that means each and every one of us committing ourselves in small ways and large ways to this larger ambition.
Great. Vicki, I want to turn it back over to you. I know we've received several questions in the chat, and I want to remind everyone that this is exactly why this is a two-part series, and we will pick this conversation back up on March 24th. So those are questions we can incorporate into our second panel on this. Today, we focus more on the recruiting and hiring aspect, and we will tackle many more issues in our next panel. And I will turn it back over to Vicki to give us our closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this informative panel today. As mentioned, the full report, a link to the full report is posted in the chat. Thank you to all our panelists for taking time today. As you can see, this was a very, very rich discussion. And again, I want to thank my committee members, Courtney, Erica, Hisham, Maria, Mario, Stacy, and Tawana. And as stated, on March 24th, we will continue this discussion with part 2, moderated by another panel member, our survey committee member, Phil Kim. And that panel will include Albert Tan, Sakina Foster, Jill Lewis, and Stacy Maris, the Deputy General Counsel of AT&T. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you and continuing this discussion. And we hope this discussion does not end, it is not contained just within this, this virtual environment. Please engage each other, because as we engage each other, then we can move the needle for us all in our community. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Vicki. The course number for today's program has been posted in the chat, but for those of you who don't see it, it's 174-113-910. And again, that's 174-113-910. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your afternoon.